So, what did we make of the speech last night? There was so much hype around this. People were thinking maybe he's going to announce boots on the ground, invasion of Karg, going after uranium, because there's hints of this big plan that they have to maybe do that. Demir, what was your initial reaction?
My initial reaction, and I texted it to you at the time, was like he's just actually stitched together all the tweets that he's made over all these weeks in this war, especially from like the last week and a half.
Yeah.
So the real striking thing was for a primetime, hyped up speech that was supposed to give clarity and purpose and mission, was that it was just as muddled as everything that's come before.
I want to pull up A8 because the president does sort of lay out a series of objectives and claims that we've gone through a lot of them. We've made progress on a lot of them, but still we need 2 to 3 weeks. So let's check out what he said.
Our objectives are very simple and clear. We are systematically dismantling the regime's ability to threaten America or project power outside of their borders. That means eliminating Iran's Navy, which is now absolutely destroyed, hurting their Air Force and their missile program at levels never seen before, and annihilating their defense industrial base. We've done all of it. Their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their missiles are just about used up or beaten.
So no doubt we've weakened Iran. I mean, you can just see it, and their leader is dead. So clearly we've made some ground. But Trump said that we've obliterated things in the past, and that hasn't always told the full story. So Dominic, I guess like when you hear these objectives, what do you think about the progress we've actually made on the ground?
I mean, we've made huge progress on all three of those things for sure. And the goal of trying to prevent Iran from being able to project force outside of its borders is a great goal to have because they've done that for a long time, and they're an enemy of the United States, and they've made it very clear that they feel that way, and they're not going to change. And so, so I think those accomplishments are enormous, and they've been accomplished at very little cost to the United States relative to the costs imposed on Iran. And so, between the U.S. and Israel strikes on the military targets there, I mean, I don't know how you could say that's anything other than a success so far.
Yeah, I guess it just like matters a lot how you package it. And he's sort of like said we've made a lot of progress in all of this, but the American people still seem to be a little dubious about this whole thing. Why do you think? I totally agree with you, Dominic. Like, we have absolutely crushed a lot of their military capability, but people are still really upset about this war. And I wonder if the president could have done anything to explain it better.
Well, the confusion is still understandable because in the same breath, we hear Donald Trump say, we have obliterated the Navy, we've obliterated the Air Force, we have crushed them. We need 2 to 3 more weeks. We're winning. We would like our allies to help. We don't like our allies. We don't need their help. We've won. We're still fighting. We won't, we'll never give up until they surrender. These are mixed messages. And I think the president has been mixing these messages from the beginning. If you have been following along with what the president and his administration have been saying about this war for the past month, I don't think you learned anything new in last night's speech, but this was finally the correct packaging of it, regardless of what you think of that muddy messaging. This is the speech he should have given 4 weeks ago. He should have come out and said to the American people, even in this very unclear way, this is roughly what I'm intending to do.
But here's the question to all three of you. Is this operation a mowing of the lawn, or is this an operation that ends in victory? That, I still think, is the core problem in all of this messaging, and it's what you're, I think, gesturing at, what we've all been dancing around here. I think that every time that Trump talks about for 47 years they've been doing X, Y, and Z, et cetera, is this a mission to degrade or is this a mission to defeat? Now, you may say, Dominic, you in particular, like, what's the difference? Degrading is victory, that is enough of a defeat for them. I'm not sure that's true. And I think that the fact that we started this out with the, I think, frame of properly defeating Iran, not degrading and hoping for the best, that within, even if we stop bombing right now, the regime might collapse. I think that's the core of the dishonesty in this, and that's what he's been trying to dig himself out of ever since, and he failed last night at doing that.
Yeah, and I think Trump has gotten really used to these grand displays of military power that work out in a very narrow way. So the latest example is just the extraction of Nicolas Maduro, but he brought up the strike on Qasem Soleimani last night. And clearly these are things that loom large in the president's mind. He sees them as big successes because they have been. But going after, I take your point, Amir. I mean, fundamentally, I think the administration thought that they could go in here, and if they applied just enough pressure, the regime would crack.
Yep.
I personally think that the only answer to solving the Iran problem is getting rid of this regime. The regime is the Iran problem. Their ideology is the Iran problem. And that is proving far more difficult than I think the White House calculated. Now, one of the reasons, if we can pull up A3, I don't think that they did enough to think about what all the collateral would be. For example, the Strait of Hormuz. Last night, the president, as I said in the monologue, had some interesting suggestions for the Europeans. So let's check it out.
The United States imports almost no oil through the Hormuz Strait and won't be taking any in the future. We don't need it. We haven't needed it, and we don't need it. We've beaten and completely decimated Iran. They are decimated, both militarily and economically and in every other way. And the countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. They must grab it and cherish it. They can do it easily. We will be helpful, but they should take the lead in protecting the oil that they so desperately depend on.
Look, and we've talked about this a lot on the show. The president is right that others depend on the Strait of Hormuz more than we do. And I think it would certainly be nice if the Europeans were helping a little more to open the strait, but you sort of break it and you buy it. Yeah.
I'd like to highlight some inconsistencies.
Go for it.
Donald Trump says we won't be taking any more oil that's being transmitted through the Strait of Hormuz. How many times and tweets have we had about sort of in his dream world, we're just going to be getting all this oil with Iran and it's going to be great and the money and the oil is going to be flowing? I don't buy for a second that in his dream scenario, there is no more oil coming the U.S.'s way from that region. He is right to say we don't have to take it. And that is one of the huge benefits of, largely speaking, energy independence. It's not perfect in the U.S. It's pretty darn good. As we've spoken about before, it's hard to muster up too much sympathy for European allies who've been warned for a decade that they need to get their energy security in order and completely failed to do so, still are connected to these legally binding net zero targets. However, this idea that Donald Trump is saying to our allies it's going to be easy to open up the strait, let's think that through. How is Europe, how are our Asian partners going to open up the strait? Are they going to do this with military force? Or are they going to do this by negotiating with the regime that he says is pure evil for good reason and has to fall? My suspicion is if they were to reopen it, it's going to be more towards the latter. In fact, they said so yesterday. They said we're going to be using diplomatic and political tools to try to reopen the strait. America needs to think this through. Donald Trump needs to think this through. If you want to leave what you've broken for somebody else to clean up, they may not clean that up in a way that is beneficial to you. It is not going to be great if America has its closest allies negotiating with the country he wants to see fall.
Especially because they haven't been that great at negotiating with Iran.
What kind of what kind of negotiation are they going to come up with? It's baffling in some ways because, in some ways it's very Trumpian, right? That he would just be like, you guys go clean this up. I want to declare victory. But how has this not been thought through? I guess I would ask that about many things right now. How have the consequences of this war not been thought through? Damir, how have they not been thought through?
No, but it gets at something. It's what you were saying, Karine, earlier. That I think the only way to think of this war as being successful is regime change. That is the implicit point of this war. Anything short of that is going to have externalities that you've nicely laid out right here that are not going to be to our liking. Look, It's complicated. Many things can happen. He's going for 2 or 3 more weeks. We don't know how it's going to work out, where it's going to happen, where the dice are going to land on a lot of this stuff. And again, we really just shouldn't lose sight of the fact about our overwhelming overmatch here, like how many cards we still have and what we still can do in the region, including, quite frankly, putting boots on the ground and all sorts of things that I think, us sitting here stroking our chins trying to figure out what might be, I don't think we have any standing to know what our armed forces are capable of and what the status of the resistance of the Iranians are. I'm worried about it, but I have no grounds. I'm just sort of a worrywart on this sort of stuff. I have no grounds to really know.
No, I think that's right that we don't. There's a lot that we don't know, and there's a lot that the Defense Department does know, because this is contrary to the ridiculous reporting earlier about how they never expected the Strait of Hormuz. It's garbage. This has been a war game forever. There have been planned out forever. Pentagon planning for how to reopen it, for what the consequences would be if this is a problem. And if you look at the personnel who are in charge, right? Nobody has a huge amount of confidence in Pete Hegseth's leadership, for example. But the guy in charge of Central Command, Brad Cooper, is a Navy admiral. When he was appointed to that position last year, there was controversy because the person who it should have been was an Army general, and they appointed this Navy guy instead. Well, that was stupid. That was wrong. Well, I'm really glad we've got a Navy guy in charge now, right? I think, and I think when they made that decision, they knew this was coming. I think he's exactly the person that you'd want to have in charge of something like this, who and the record of it so far, from a tactical point of view, has been flawless.
The only thing I just want to stress here, though, Dominic, because everything you said is correct. However, the distinction between competent military leadership and being able to achieve things on the battlefield and the role that the civilians are supposed to have, which is to set goals properly, that's where the big hole is on this. And the fact is, absolutely, our military has been training for a very long time to be able to open the Strait of Hormuz. And wargaming going back decades knew that something like this would happen. And so, again, I don't doubt that we have plans to do something about it. That said, there's every bit of evidence to suggest, as Karine said earlier, that they expected a big, overwhelming smackdown in Tehran, that the whole thing would crumble. And Trump has, over the past few weeks, even the last few days, has fessed up to this fact that he was surprised that they had the stones to actually attack energy infrastructure in the GCC countries. He did not expect it. The political leadership did not expect it. Now they're in a war they did not expect and did not fully want. This is not saying that we're going to lose it necessarily. That is to say that they did not expect all of these knock-on effects, the bigger effects. I'm still sort of shocked at, that I don't know. Hopefully they're modeling the impacts on the global economy and how that's going to play out. You see stories that they're modeling what $150 per barrel crude looks like and what that does to the global economy. And I hope they're taking that seriously, because I think, as time goes on, it's going to be serious and it's going to, even over time, pinch us.